Hi, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Dr. Lindsay Renzullo.
I'm Dr. Christopher Nolikin, and this is Jeremy Cohen of the Boston Dog Lawyers, who you may remember that we had on a previous episode. Definitely, I'd suggest that if you missed that episode, you go back and listen or watch, because he definitely provided us a ton of great information about law and how it relates to pets in many different ways. We wanted to have him back because it was just such an interesting episode for us, and we felt like we just didn't even scratch the surface.
It was it was super fun. It was actually one of our highest viewed episodes too, I believe. So I think that people out there interested, you're famous now, and we're happy to have you back.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So we just wanted to take a couple of minutes at the beginning of the episode and just mention coronavirus. It's been out in the news, and we feel
people haven't probably heard about it because you don't really.
Oh no, none of them heard about it. So I've gotten a few questions about how it relates to pets, and realistically, the fact is we don't really know fully at this point. So there's one case of in Hong Kong where they feel very strongly that this dog at least is infected with coronavirus and not symptomatic for that disease. That is the only case that we know of.
And the dog that was in Hong Kong was a dog that was living with somebody that was positive for corona. So they were concerned about whether or not this could be positive just because he had the remnants on him, but they, did a future additional testing and said that maybe he was still positive. So the data on that still isn't 100% clear.
Yeah.
But as of now, there's no zoonotic potential that we know of, meaning that animals can pass it to people or people pass it to animals.
Right now, the thought in that case is that the dog contracted it probably from the owner, but we just don't have all of the details. It's a different country. The testing is a little bit different. And so right now, we're just advising that people follow the CDC recommendations for your own health, and don't come to your veterinary hospital if you're sick. Maybe I think that's a good suggestion.
Or your lawyer.
Or your lawyer. And I did, some people have asked me, well, can the pets pass it to other people? And again, we just don't know, but consider that your pet is, a thing that can have virus particles on it, right? So you probably, if you're sick and you have coronavirus, your pet should probably not go to a nursing home.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I do think that taking some precautions, and, there was some advisement that maybe if you are sick with coronavirus, that viewing your animals sort of in quarantine as well, not having that animal be, okay, I'm going to have the dog worker come in and take this dog out into the neighborhood, so just being careful and cautious with your animal, because at this point the data just isn't there. And so playing on the, side of being more cautious is more important, I think, at this point.
So, but still follow all the CDC recommendation, which is wash your hands.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't wash
don't
your
touch
hands,
your face.
Hand sanitizer. Don't wash your face.
Definitely wash your face.
Don't touch your face. All right.
Yeah.
So
that's that.
That's
the elephant in the room.
Say.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I can go home and love up my Maisie.
Yes, you
love
can.
Her up.
Yes,
love her
definitely.
Yeah.
All right.
So let's throw this over to you. So I think we just kind of wanted this to be a little bit of a freeform conversation.
Great.
Kind of what is interesting you lately in cases? What are some trends? What are some interesting cases you've run into?
And just to remind the audience, so too, you at this current time are just practicing law that relates to anything that has to deal with animals, right? Just to bring
just
everybody,
pets.
just pets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pets, yep.
Yeah.
If it's a pet, I'll deal with it.
Yep.
I got a call about a wild turkey, and the woman started off the call. She was an attorney who said, "I need you to get my pet wild turkey back." I said right away, that's not something that we do.
Right.
I don't think you have any rights to the turkey. And she explained how important the turkey was to her family. The day her dog died, this turkey started to live in their yard. And some kids came over, they were teasing the turkey, and the turkey pecked a kid in the face. So animal control comes, takes the turkey away.
Oh.
This woman is crying on the phone to me. And I'm just thinking, I can't get involved. So I said, all right, let me make a phone call. And so I did. And what I found out is animal control has no, it's not within their purview to remove wildlife.
Mm-hmm.
That's at the state level, the environmental police. So she called me about an hour later and said, crying, "I can't believe it. Here comes a police car. and the turkey's in the back
They
seat.
brought the turkey back.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, the visual for me was just great that the turkey was returned
That's
to her
hilarious.
yard. I don't know what happened after that, but
That's fantastic. We actually had a famous town turkey in Reading. I don't know if you heard about that. There was a big town turkey in Reading that a lot of people loved.
Is that Limpy?
That was Limpy the town turkey, who eventually got hit by a car.
Oh no, you didn't tell
Limpy
me
is
that.
no longer with us.
Oh,
It's very sad.
That's very sad.
But he was actually a great, town, I don't know, pick me up in a lot of ways, because we raised a lot of money for the Reading Food Pantry because of him. So it was really cool. But anyway, poor Limpy. R.I.P.
Rallying around their turkeys.
Yeah, the turkeys, they're very cute creatures. Yeah. So wildlife, you're not involved in any wildlife.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I am
Well,
a
you
little
are
bit.
now.
Just a little bit.
Watch out.
Right.
Watch out.
Yesterday, I got an interesting call because we handle emotional support animal in service dog cases. Not a lot. I take maybe 2 or 3 a year because I want to make sure it's legitimate, especially with the service animal.
Yep.
I'm sorry, the emotional support animal.
Yeah.
It's usually people trying to live somewhere, and the landlord says you can't have a dog.
Mhm.
And if the potential client is then saying, well, it's an emotional support animal, I don't really take that.
Mhm.
If it was already an emotional support animal and you have the right documentation, but this woman was being chased out of her apartment complex because she had an emotional support animal, which she called a psychiatric service dog. I didn't get into it that much, but her task that the dog did, and the reason they wanted the dog out, is she taught the dog to bark and lunge at people. So the task for this dog was to protect her when she's in public. That's what I said.
That's
How convenient
Yeah.
that you are saying your dog is supposed to be able to live with you because it's a service dog, because you've trained it to basically scare everybody. And that's the reason she can't have the dog. So those kind of cases I steer away from.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just it fits too well. Like if you really have a need, and so we're trying to do what we can at the firm to make sure we just take on the legitimate cases. Today, after this, I have a court appearance, and it's for something that happens a lot. We represent a dog walker, and while she was walking the dog off leash, the dog ran after her and bit a woman. And under the law, it's the woman has rights to recovery. She got bit, and she's going after the dog's owner and my client, the dog walker. And so both parties can be liable up to a point, and there's ways to defend these. My client does not have insurance. So one thing pet owners need to look at, and it's an awkward conversation, but when you meet a dog walker, does that dog walker have insurance? And I've had multiple cases where the dog walker says they have insurance, or they put it on their website, but they actually don't have it.
Need to see
Now,
the
do you
right-
mean
need
like
to see the paperwork.
specifically insured to be a dog walker, not just health insurance?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean liability insurance.
Yeah.
So if I've hired somebody to walk my dog and the dog bites somebody, if I own a home, my homeowner's insurer could be sued. If I have rental insurance, they could be sued. But the walker is the one who may have caused the incident. It happened under their watch while they were the keeper. So it is an awkward conversation, but it's much better than showing up in court, fighting each other to see who's going to pay the bills. To say, I have to ask you this. Can I see a copy of your insurance coverage or your declarations page? It's just a one-page thing, and it can make a big difference, especially really for the dog owner.
Do you know what too? I bet like some dog walkers that are out there, and I could just be playing into maybe how naive they may be in some ways, but like you wouldn't necessarily think that you would need that as a dog walker, right? So I mean, some of these dog walkers that start up their business don't necessarily probably think, you know what, now that I'm doing this business is great, it's easy to do, but you know what, I actually do need to have some sort of an insurance thing. That's a great point.
They don't know that. And at whatever business you have, you're dealing with the public. The first thing, before you even come up with a name, you need insurance.
Yeah.
But that's not fun. You know, the fun stuff is coming up with a name and a logo.
Right.
The insurance stuff is boring and not fun, and it's an investment, but you will be out of business if you don't set that up.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you think about that with contractors. I mean, even people get kind of, they get into trouble with contractors, even where they don't ask to see insurance. Something happens, that contractor employs someone who gets injured on the job, and you're actually liable for that kind of thing. You don't think about that with dog walkers. I don't know.
I don't think until you mentioned it right now, and I've known people that have sort of started their own business. And I would have to say, I'm not sure any of those people probably are.
Well, that's my
Well,
kids
they
wanted
started
to start selling stuff on Etsy, and I was like, no, wait a minute. Is this? Do you have a business plan? And what do you?
What's your 5-year goal?
Now I have to ask them, do you have insurance?
Yeah, but that's a very good point, though. Honestly.
Then maybe we should stop the show. You've learned something. We're all in a great spot.
Yeah.
Because even as an owner, you know, I don't think that majority of the owners would even remotely think about that to ask that.
I have another case where I'm representing the owner and their dog Tucker, who the dog walker again let the dog off leash, ran into I-93, got hit by a car and lived. $18,000 later, lived. And my client's out $18,000. So we had to sue the dog walker who said she had insurance. She doesn't have insurance. Oh. So now we went to court and we have an $18,000 judgment. And now you have to try to collect on it. Yeah. I mean, part of this, having this firm is just holding people accountable throughout the pet industry, the different people you encounter as a pet owner, including yourselves. I mean, pet owners need to step up and take more responsibility for things too. Mm-hmm. For instance, retractable leashes. When I drive by somebody with a retractable leash, I say, that's great for business. That's a future client.
Oh, yeah.
It's just not right that you put your dog.
We don't go out into the public and do that, but we hate retractable leashes.
We hate retractable leashes too. As a vet, they're awful for training. They're a hazard. They're dangerous.
I try not to be.
But we're not angry about them.
Right.
We're not angry.
Right. I never stop somebody and will say it because I don't want to be that person.
Of course. Yeah.
The other thing about the retractable leash, because I see this on cases where somebody's dog got attacked, is if there's a dog off leash that's chasing your dog on the other end.
Yes.
It's not so much that, now you have the extra time of trying to reel the dog in. Right. And during that time, the other dog who's off leash is going to grab a hold of your dog. And if not, it's also teasing it's enticing the dog that's chasing yours. It keeps coming back quickly. So it comes up and then ultimately bites the owner on the arm when he or she scoops the dog. There's just so many bad things can hapen with a retractable leash. Yeah. Especially, and then eating things. I mean, you have no control over that dog. And it's not for the dog's benefit to say, well, I let him or her just wander around. Right. It could lead to a problem. I, again, though, would say that maybe some people wouldn't know that. Because I remember even in college, I thought retractable leashes, this was before I thought they were they were super cool, right? You're like, oh, this is great. I can just let it go off. But to try to reel them in is actually quite hard. And then if you happen to be holding the leash and the dog decides to run, it gives you awful burn. Ooh, yeah. So again, it's things that I think that people, see out in the general public. They see people using retractable leashes. It kind of looks cool and seems cool, but they are really dangerous and they're awful. They're awful. The off leash stuff is interesting too. So that's, you have dog walkers, it sounds like, that often let the dogs off leash. And is that the kind of thing that in your experience, they have had the owner's consent to that, or are they doing that without, or? They don't necessarily have the written consent. Yeah. They often say they had the verbal consent, but some of this happens in places you're not supposed to have a dog off leash. Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But in most parts of, frankly, most places do not allow dogs off leash, even places that people frequently do let their dogs off leash, right? Yeah, there's very limited areas. Right. Yeah. And so I'm seeing more cases where we're defending either the owner of the dog that bit or the person who was in charge of the dog, or both, because sometimes insurance won't cover it or there isn't insurance. But it's also, a lot of people believe, well, it's strict liability. Plaintiffs' lawyers take these cases and say, pay me. But there's reasons dogs bite. And sometimes it's the fault of the victim. Right? It can be. It's not a popular thing to say, but it can be. In these cases, we've been unable to find any fault on the victim. But where we can also make a difference is people think, this is a good payday for me. I got bit by a dog. They're going to pay me for the scar, even though they have low medical bills. The reason we're going to court today is because the victim, she got bit in the butt, said her ability to run, bicycle was over. But then we find out within 7 months, she ran 2 5Ks. She went surfing. And that's all publicly available, or things that you could discover. Right. In certain tools in the litigation process, a deposition where they have to tell the truth. And it's just not right that she said that she did not she does not have a baby because she decided not to have a baby because of the dog bite.
Wow.
And that's so a dog bite to the butt. And now she's looking for compensation because there's one less human being on earth because she made the choice. But as you dig deeper, you find out that's not.
That's interesting.
And to think that you're going to make somebody pay for that. Like,
right.
You don't have to embellish. You should get what you're entitled to.
Yes.
But so some of it is, sure, our client's responsible, but let's be reasonable about what the payday will be like.
You mentioned it briefly, and I was wondering before you did, but about a client that could be at fault, meaning that it's somebody that got bit or a victim actually being at fault. Like, let's say you are walking in an area that is listed as a off-leash area, because there are places in Massachusetts, I know a few places, and either you're doing a behavior that
like you have
antagonized.
A in your pocket.
Yeah, exactly. What if you did? What if you had some food, the dog came to get it, or you tried to kick the dog if the dog was running up to you, and then the dog retaliated by biting? Whatever it may be, would that case ever sort of hold in court?
Great question. So we just won a case like that. This was a nasty battle because even in court, my favorite thing is, because people haven't been doing this work for very long, defending dogs and dog owners. When the judge or the clerk says, "I've never heard that argument before," and I was saying, "You have now," and it was a winning argument. So we had my client had her dog in a park at Harvard, and the owners of this much smaller dog came in. It was 9:00 at night, and they put their little dog down off leash. The nighttime is important because you just can't see as much. Plus, other dogs' antennas are up. I know mine is at night. She's different when she's outside. She's more aware of things. So my client's dog runs over and bites the little dog and causes $6,000 in surgery. That's really significant. And the dog owner said, "Look, all I want is my $6,000 back." And here's how the case ended up. He couldn't believe this. He was also a lawyer. He said, "How dare you try to make this argument?" But here's how the argument went, and it fits your example. When you put your dog down off leash, you're responsible for that.
Right.
And in Massachusetts, we have ways of holding people some percentage responsible. So it's not that he assumed the risk. That's not what we're saying. But as a pet owner, and he was outraged to hear this, but it's true, you have a duty to keep a good lookout, to know that there's another dog there. And when you let your dog off leash, you kind of contributed to this. So the court ruled that it was 50-50. So my client only had to pay $3,000. And I thought that was fair. I hate to see what happened to the dog, but the dog is fine now. Everything was paid for. But to think that as a pet owner, you have no responsibility in a situation like that, those days are over. I mean, and so that's where I say, clients, if he was my client, I would have fought it too, but I would understand you kind of contributed to this when you just let your dog free.
Yeah. I mean, again, you can extrapolate it to other industries as well. Like if you're driving, you most likely have some responsibility for whatever accident occurs, right? If you're rear-ended and you were literally stopped, fine. But oftentimes that's the way that insurance companies handle those kinds of motor vehicle things or other liability things, is that you're assuming some risk simply by doing the thing that was happening. You know what I mean?
Yes, we have a question from one of our viewers.
I actually have a question about something that
little bit of a right, we're not live.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a question actually about something I have been through before. So I frequent a place that is on leash. So it's a hiking trail, it's on leash, but I always see dogs off leash.
Yes.
Every now and then there are dogs who do respond to their owner's calling, but usually not. So my dog is always on leash, right at my heel, and with a gentle leader on so I can control him. He is super friendly, but he does not like dogs coming up to him that he doesn't know. He just gets fearful and of course can then react to that. So when I see a dog coming at us, I call out to the owner. I'll say, can you please leash your dog while we pass? And they always call out saying, "Don't worry, my dog's friendly." And I yell back, "My dog is scared and I don't want your dog to get hurt." And when they call, the dog doesn't come back. So I end up picking my 55-pound dog up. And they look at me like I'm crazy. But in a situation where that happened, but I didn't pick my dog up, the dog came up and then my dog ended up hurting that dog. What would happen there?
All right, so let's look at it first from your perspective. And I think you need a hand signals, and you did everything right. I use a lot of hand signals with people like that because they never think, oh, my dog is fine. It's your fault. You're not supposed to be doing what you're doing here with an off-leash dog. So from your perspective, let's say, well, first of all, that person is violating the leash law there. So sometimes violating the leash law is an automatic something called a tort, where you've committed a wrongful act just by the very nature of not following the rules there. For you, if your dog is attacked, certainly it's all on that person, but so much is happening. You have to figure out a way to know who that person is or take a picture, because if you don't find their information, you can't hold them accountable. If your dog attacks that dog, there's a nuance in the law that says, in terms of like liability or a dangerous dog, you're not a dangerous dog if you were protecting in a reasonable fashion either your owner or I'm saying this like I'm talking to the dog, but you're not a dangerous dog if you're protecting your owner or yourself with a reasonable amount of force or aggressiveness. So here, that dog's trying to protect you and him, and in that situation, I think there's no liability on you. That's all on the other person. And in fact, they may even have to be brought before a select board for a dangerous dog hearing, because these people have to be taught lessons. That's about taking accountability for your pet. Mm-hmm. And those cases, if I was defending that's pretty hard to defend. You did everything right. You gave the warnings. Your dog had the gentle leader on even. So it's holding that person accountable. So I do see when that happens, even if nothing came of it, as much as you don't want to be a tattletale, somebody has to bring this to animal control's attention, and they're supposed to do something about that. Yeah. And usually if the person's there, they'll be back again with their dogs. Usually they walk at the same time every day or something. So there's ways to find them, but they become kind of bullyish about it. They don't want you.
They usually think that person is crazy. Like, for why are you picking up your giant dog? My dog's totally friendly.
You should carry flyers with you. With just like the basics, like this area has. I mean, I'm that way. Let's just say it. But like,
as you're passing by them,
you just hand them a little
flyer
card. Like you guys here in the marketing, you can do all kinds of little swag, right? So make a little fancy flyer that's like, this is a leash only area. You are liable if anything happens.
It's true.
But I do think logo in the bottom right of the
flyer. And there you go. Yeah.
And I have my attorney says, my lawyer says.
Yeah. But it is a good reminder for the owners, because I feel like so often owners think that their dogs are either well trained, but when they see another dog or they're really excited if they're off leash, even if they wouldn't necessarily initiate a bite, they might not be as socially smart. They would just go right up to a dog. And, when you're trying to, listen to somebody saying that my dog doesn't want this, if you do not have control of your dog to verbally come over with a command, which majority of people don't, it puts everybody in a really bad situation.
And that's actually what's going on. My dog is not out there to attack. And he passes other dogs totally fine. It is only if they come running up to him. He is socially not well enough to be like, oh, you're not attacking me.
Right.
Yeah. So it wouldn't be a horrible attack, but it would be a snip. Get away from me.
Yeah.
And it'd be enough that you wouldn't want to go back there. And if that's part of your routine, you should be able to go back there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a kind of a word of warning, I guess, that everyone should, like, we've been talking a lot about leash stuff. Like, we do hear fairly frequently owners that are like, oh, I let my dog off leash here or here. And they're often not fenced in areas. And, it is something to be aware of. Like, it only takes once for one of these incidents to happen, or a dog to get hit by a car, run out into the street. And it doesn't matter how well trained your dog is, there's gonna be a situation probably that would cause them to break that training,
I got a call yesterday. So we do get a lot of calls, which is a great thing. They're not all cases, and the dog got off the property and bit somebody. And he said, but the dog was on leash at the time. And it was a 20-foot leash. He said, so we didn't violate the law because the dog was on leash.
So he got off the property with the leash still attached to him?
Yeah.
Is that what? Oh, okay.
Except I said, well,
is there an owner attached to the end
who
of the
was
leash?
attached to was anybody on the other end of the leash? He said, well, no, but the dog was still on the leash.
Oh, that's a sneaky way.
I thought leash laws specified it had to be like 6 foot. Don't they?
Well, I think 20 foot. I don't know that there's a law that actually, each city and town can have their own law.
Okay.
I haven't seen that. Usually if there's an incident with a dog, then they can rule that it has to be on 6 feet or even a 3-footer.
Mm.
But that nuance. So you hear facts. You hear the headline. Dog attacks woman, but he was on leash. But you have to dig a little deeper before you start picking sides in a battle.
And with like something like a place like a dog park where people are going there with the intention of having their dogs off leash and mingling, when you have fights that sort of ensue at a dog park, is it pretty clear cut who's at fault? Meaning if your dog is the one that was the aggressor, that person's going to be liability?
That evening one that he was just talking about.
Well, that evening one too. Yeah, that evening one too.
An actually designated dog park?
Yeah.
So I just think if you're going to bring your dog there and let them off leash, you have to believe that there's going to be an incident. Yeah. And so people who try to break up the fight, they get bit, and then they're suing somebody. You know what? My feeling, and the law is, it can go either way, is you decided to go to a dog park. What did you think? This is a high probability that there's going to be another dog there that has anxiety or doesn't like your dog, or they interact, and maybe they're playing. We had a case where they were playing, but one of the dogs was a pug. And so the pug's eye popped out while they were playing. Yeah. Is that really the dog owner's fault whose dog came over to play? Of course not, but they wanted it to be. So I think the rules are completely different in a dog park, and I don't really take those cases because I think what did you think was going to happen?
And usually there's a big sign on the door of the dog park that says owner assumes all responsibility, enter at your risk, which I know is not necessarily legally binding, but
it also that prevents the city or town from liability as well. Those are tough cases. I don't have the passion I have for those cases to take them and defend them necessarily.
Yeah.
So switching to something a little bit more fun, because I said we get all these calls, but some of them are just a lot of them are sad and just elicit a lot of emotions that aren't fun and happy. But so we have to look for things that are funny or enjoyable.
Yeah.
So I'm
so excited about hearing.
I got two, I think, since the last time I was here that stand out. One is a woman called because she was kicked out of a restaurant because she had a service dog with her.
A true service dog, not an emotional support. We don't know.
She called it a true service dog.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this is where, again, it's questionable. And she's telling the story that she has a service dog because she's been in bad relationships in the past, and it's a chow. And she tells me how chows are especially good at psychoanalyzing people. And Freud apparently had a chow. So she's at the restaurant and she's meeting a first date.
Google it.
We're gonna have to Google it.
So you were shaking your head like, oh, maybe she's right about the chows.
No.
I have not heard about Freud.
I have a lot of thoughts circling in my head.
Yes, so do I.
In that we do have
sorry.
struggles sometimes with chows as veterinary patients.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. They are not as soft as they look, is what I've learned. And so the restaurant owner was like, you can't have the dog here. Right. She was explaining why she has it. And you don't have to tell why you have it. They can ask, does it perform a task? But she told the task, and he didn't find that legitimate. He called the police. So she wanted me to go after the restaurant. And she said, look, he definitely performs his task. After every date, there's like an assessment done. And I look at his behavior during the date and after, and that'll tell me whether there should be a second date or not. And I'm like, this is gold. I've got to write this down. This is why we take all the calls, just for something like that.
How many second dates are there, do you think?
I know. I bet there's not a lot.
Can't be a lot.
Yeah.
Oh my! I'm sure it's on her choice, though. It's more probably on the guy's choice.
That's the kind of stuff that the airlines and housing people have to deal with, is that they have to sort through some of those things, and sometimes then people are calling lawyers to try to, it becomes more of a headache for them, but it's clearly not, I don't know, some of these are just so clearly to me not legitimate.
Right. And I have to retain some credibility.
Yeah.
If just like the turkey case, I was hesitant, so
you wouldn't want to take it and be then now everyone views you as the guy that takes wacky cases.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, I think the thing is that, to all of our pet lovers out there, and we've all had dogs, I feel as though you do have a good connection with them. But as far as having a legitimate legal sort of case because they're not allowing your dog in a restaurant because you interpret the dog is able to sort of psychoanalyze. That's just not something that restaurant should be able to be expected to do.
A lot of what we do is experimental because it's not that it's a new area of law. It's just has been neglected for decades.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to think about bringing that argument in front of a judge.
Right.
And it's hard enough as it is. And every judge will see Boston dog lawyers. I never knew such a thing existed.
Right.
And sometimes they'll call me in chambers and want to talk about it, which is fun. But there's certainly some judges who I can't believe that I have to sit here today and hear about a dog case.
Yeah.
But you have to. You have to now.
Yeah, definitely.
Would they say that about other, sort of property things? Like, do they say that about something like this is a thing about a piano? Or like they take those things seriously, don't they? Why is it dogs or not?
And exactly. And so that's my attitude. Like, don't let my energy reflect their energy. Just
they're passionate.
Hired to make this argument. I believe in the argument. So let's keep going.
Another question about kind of a liability thing. Living with a roommate that has a dog. Obviously there's a lot that can go wrong. Maybe it's the dog destroying the house and, there's 3 roommates total, but it's only one roommate's dog. What are some things that, if you've seen anything go wrong with roommates that have a dog, anything with a landlord, have you seen anything like that?
Oh, I have a nasty trial going on the South Shore. Roommate moves in with his dog, and my client's one of the roommates who starts to take care of the dog, falls in love with the dog, and the original owner just doesn't even care about the dog anymore. Mm-hmm. My client's going on vacation, taking the dog. My client was texting like, the dog has to go out. Please, somebody take the dog out, buying the food. Wow. And so at the end of the roommate relationship, my client said, I'm taking the dog. And the other guy called the police. So we're trying to show that my client, who didn't own the dog initially, but by investing time, energy, money, has suddenly become the owner, and that the other person sort of consented to that. And we've been to court 8 times. We're halfway through the trial. It's wow. Really nasty because the original owner of the dog, can't believe that by neglecting to take care of the dog for 1.5 years, he suddenly lost his ownership rights. But that's about personal.
It's like a custody battle. It's a custody battle for sure, right?
Exactly. So my client, our argument is it's either my client's dog now, or because they took care of the dog for 180 days, if you had a daycare take care of the dog, that's at least $30 a day at a very conservative. So it's either our dog or you owe them $15,000. So you decide. And so that's kind of what we put before the judge. My client would much rather have the dog, but that's the value of the services.
Right.
So that's one roommate issue that comes up. Another is, well, a lot of it could depend on who was the roommate first. If there's a roommate who's allergic to the dog, those are things that should be discussed in advance, or a cat. And sometimes if there's 3 roommates, suddenly there's a witness in there. One of those roommates is suddenly going to become a witness. I have another one right now, 2 students, lease ends in May. Why they did this, I don't know, but a lot of people do this. College students, they decided last year to get a dog together.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you
we
think?
do hear that, I know.
What do you think?
That's because they're college kids,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we just had to file suit on that.
Yeah.
To try to, and my client just wants really half the dog, but how are you going to get half?
Right. Especially they go across the country,
you
or
get
whatever.
jobs.
Right. Yeah.
So, but the thing is, people are allowed to be dumb and make mistakes, and that's one of the reasons that they make insurance and lawyers.
Well, it probably seems fun in the sense of, it's fun, we'll have a college room dog,
the frat house.
Yeah.
I got a call about a school system, a local school system that has a tortoise, but it's a Russian tortoise, so now I know about them, and it's this big.
Yeah.
And on the weekends it stays in school, and so there's a teacher who said, I want to be able, it's not right, I want to be able to take the tortoise home on weekends and during the week. And I thought about it, and sure, that's in the best interest of the tortoise, perhaps, but she doesn't really have rights to the tortoise. Right. And so she really didn't have a legal standing. It makes sense, but she didn't have a legal standing. And that's what some of these roommates will say, that She may have taken care of it or cared about it, but there's no documentation that says she's the owner.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So we look at hundreds of things as to who should be the owner. And sometimes it is split where there's shared custody.
What about cases of destruction? So if roommates are moving and there's one pet and there was destruction and there was maybe some sort of, conversation about, we'll just split
like
it or something.
And stuff like
that. So like something like that.
So that's going to be a problem because chances are you're not going to be able to resolve that before the landlord comes in and sees the damage. And too often that will end up in court. Sometimes though, it might only be over a few $100s or getting $1,000 back. So it may not be wise to hire a lawyer for that, but that's what small claims court is for, where the other roommates would have to pursue the one pet owner. But document everything, pictures. You need pictures and you need proof of costs or payment or what the landlord did to repair it. If you have your evidence, you should win. And that happens quite a bit too. And so sometimes people will take off a few days before the lease with their dogs so that you can't find them.
Oh, wow.
Well, that happens with, I think that's another, like, when you're inexperienced with all of this stuff, not realizing that you should have renter's insurance, not realizing that, if you have 3 roommates, you should all split the security deposit and be equally liable. Right. Or if the dog, like, you should think about these things in advance. Maybe if somebody has a dog, maybe they have to pay half of the security deposit or something, right?
My client brings his family dog to New York because he's going to live there for 6 months. And he just wants some comfort. And he has 2 other roommates. One of them decides, this is my dog now. So my client comes home and she sues him. Well, he calls me and says, this woman wants to try to get this dog. And I brought the dog. She fell in love with it. She calls it her emotional support animal, but now she says it's her dog. I said, well, I just don't see how. But she's threatened to sue him. And then a day later, and this happens a lot in custody cases, I get a call from the woman. She said, will you please represent me? And she tells me, so this happens once a week with custody. And that's because there's just so few people who do this stuff. Yeah. And it's awkward. Yes. And
but you have to, like, I guess if neither of them has retained you, do you have to wait for them to decide who's...
Well, so sometimes early on, I was getting shut out of the whole case because I believe there was a conflict. So what I've learned, and there's all sorts of ways to learn this with the Board of Bar Overseers that tells you ethically what you can do, as long as you're not taking confidential information. So if we hear the name of the dog, we usually always go by the name of the dog. And we just got one on, the dog's name was Max. And the person who does my intake said, that reminds me, we just got a Max. And sure enough, it's the same case. So we'll stop the intake. In that instance, the woman traveled back and forth from New York to pursue this case to get the dog back. We won because you can't, in that case, she didn't have any paperwork that would show that she took over rightful ownership, but she put up quite a battle, brought witnesses in by train twice to court here. Wow. So people will battle because a dog is so unique, or a cat.
So and they know to like think that you could live. I mean, like the first situation that you've mentioned where somebody effectively was neglecting their dog and another owner in the household like took full responsibility for that dog, and the owner was letting them travel with it, like they were letting this happen. But that's not the same thing as like somebody just kind of glomming onto the dog and being like, it's mine now.
I love it.
It's mine now.
Yeah.
Right. Just because you took it to
so
the park
nefarious.
Exactly. And that's what we have to try to guard against. And then sometimes we talk off air about judges and how serious things are. We've had 2 cases where we've gone to court and the judge will say, I don't know whose dog it is, but possession is 9/10 of the law. What? No, it isn't. There is nowhere in any law book or case law that we found that says possession is 9/10 of the law. And that doesn't account for what if the person, so if you steal a dog, suddenly
now you own it.
Right. So that argument from a judge bothers me so much that
you hear it though all the time. I feel like I've heard that all the time.
It's like we're born knowing certain things, and one of them is, possession is 9/10 of the law. I don't know where it came from. Yeah. And now I'm a little bit more comfortable in court. We were in Cambridge, and I saw the judge going this way. My client didn't have the dog, but it was her dog. I know it was her dog. It was, and I saw her. I said, Your Honor. So this is where I was breaking down the formality. Please don't say it. Please don't say it. I know what you're about to say. Please don't say it. He said, where I come from, possession 9 tests. I'm like, you did not learn that. Your Honor, all due respect, because you have to be passive aggressive. When I was in law school, we never covered that, in our studies, but we still lost. And that's the power of a judge. You could have the best evidence, but depending on how they feel about pets, that makes a big difference. Any of your
cases go to a jury, or like, what is the difference for our viewers out there, where you're going to have a judge versus a jury?
The difference is how much it's going to cost. That's one difference, because a jury trial is so much fun. It's just so much fun. Yeah. And before I did the dog stuff, I'd been a lawyer for 18 years. Terrified. I hated going to court. I would never consider a trial, much less a jury trial. It is because you shut everything out for 3 or 4 days. This is all you do. You don't answer your phone. You just prep for it. And the difference. So in certain cases, if it's a dangerous dog case and you're appealing it, only a judge can hear that. The law doesn't allow a jury. But if it's a custody case, we always request a jury. And we've had some before a jury. But because it comes down to the law about property right now, because dogs are considered property, if we think we have a strong property-based case, you really want a judge to look at that to say, okay, just because they know the law.
But you don't want the emotional involvement of the jury to pull at the case.
And I lost a custody case, my first custody case in front of a jury, and I thought we had this, but I had the ex-girlfriend. The ex-boyfriend, he was pretty sympathetic. He had overcome cancer, and the jury just went with him. You're just so furious and angry and can't say anything. But it is a rush when you're waiting for that decision and everything comes down. You're with your client. And I know we're not, these aren't murder cases and stuff, but at that point in time, it's pretty important to that person to get their dog back. And you just never know what a jury's going to do.
Interesting.
I promised a second sort of quick hitter on a decent fun story. And that was a woman. I don't think this happened since before I was here last, because I probably would have told it. She called and said, my dog was stolen and I need you to get it back. All right. Who stole it? Well, I don't know their names.
Oh.
But they came and they took my dog. All right. Where is it? Dog's in Boston. Okay. Well, that's helpful. And so I get a description of the dog. I said, where is it in Boston? In a 3-story brownstone in the basement.
Oh.
I said, well, okay, how do you know this? She said, well, because at night she comes to me in dream state. And she's telling me, please, mama, please come get me. I'm here. I'm being kept in the basement. All right. And I can't terminate the call. The person wants to be heard. I'm not just going to say I'm done.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, so we're in Boston. She said she hasn't told me that. I said, well, next time, can you get the address? And she said, well, the problem is when they brought her in by car, they drugged her purposely so she couldn't see the address. So all I know is that the dog is somewhere in Boston in a brownstone. Please help me.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, so much goes through your head. I have so much I got to do right now, other work.
But I won.
But this is fascinating. Yeah. And I have to take the leap that the dog is talking to. I'm like, you know what? I need more information. If you can get me more information, I will help you. But I can't just go knocking on doors in Boston. There's nothing for me to run with there.
How many brownstones are there in Boston?
Oh, my goodness.
Right. But again, at least you can hang up the phone and say, all right, that was somewhat, I feel bad for her, but that was so different of a call that it was a little enjoyable.
Oh, my God.
That she really believes she talks to her dog. And that's cool. Maybe it does happen. But that's a day in the life of a dog lawyer. And the other thing that's happened since the last time I was here, these producers reached out and they came up and followed me for 2 days to pitch a reality show.
They did. Yeah. That's fantastic.
And
super cool.
I wasn't taking it serious. And the day before they come up, my wife said, "What are you going to do with him?" I'm like, I don't know. So suddenly I planned out so many things. They came to court with me. They came to hearings at night. They filmed me playing with my dog. They filmed me on my deck, just talking about the practice, driving everywhere. I was mic'd with a camera. So is it going anywhere?
Because there's no shows like that on TV.
No, there are none.
What they said, this was in June, they said, be patient. And it takes a while. So they they condensed 2 days into 5-minute, what they call a sizzle reel. They sent it to me. They made me seem fun, funny, energetic, smiley. Like the editing is perfect. It's awesome. Kind of funny. And I brought them to many odd people, including some lawyers that I know. One who he's a lawyer, but he's focused on massaging pets. He's really good at it, but he's explaining how he goes about that, and he's built a business around that. And then another woman who's a lawyer who is trying to make it so cats are licensed and kept just indoors. And that's fascinating to me that somebody would, in her reasons for it, has nothing to do with the cat. It's about all the dead birds in her neighborhood.
The environmental concerns associated with it.
Right. So I did get together some interesting people, and it may go nowhere, which is fine. Just the fact that somebody was interested enough.
That is so cool.
But then they told me, well, you'd be the center, and it'd be all the people in your life would be the characters. So
stay tuned.
Right here.
Stay tuned.
Come right out here to Bulger.
And you have to let us know if that does happen, because we can we'll push that.
We can promote it.
Yeah,
we would definitely love that. That'd be super cool.
Yeah. It was fun time.
Yeah.
So let me ask you one final question. How many calls do you get what's the ratio of calls that you get versus actual cases that you end up with?
It's 24%. So my background, I used to work for GE.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. I used to work for GE, and they measure everything. So I'm constantly measuring everything. So right now we're averaging 2.7 calls a day in this month. It's a busy month. And some of those calls are people I just never would take the case. Yep. So the real conversion rate of cases I want to take is probably closer to 50%. And one of the big obstacles is people who say, oh, I have to pay for this? So you have to pay for it because first of all, we're good. We win 80% of our cases and that's because I have some good lawyers working with me and paralegals. But if we did it for free, and I'm sure you're always getting calls for free, and I've never had somebody call me and say, the vet said they would do this for free. If I do it for free, then the business is going to close.
Right.
I want this to exist beyond me and be available to people in other states. It can't be a business if you're not bringing in money, because there's a lot of bills to pay as a business. Absolutely. And I always say, look, there's a McDonald's across from my office. Come to my office. If you go there and you ask for a free hamburger and fry, which costs $5, if they're going to give that to you for free, then I can understand it more. But you can't even get free $5 from them, and you're asking me to and they said, well, just write it off. Write it off of what? Like it's just not a concept.
Yeah, we're on the same page with you there. We definitely get a lot of that, like especially when it's associated with animals. It seems as though people have a thought that it should be for the love of animals,
right? That you should have a soft spot for them, and so because of that, you should do it all for free.
I just can't, and I certainly will, especially where the people don't ask. If I see I could make a difference, but it's the people who say, if you don't take this for free, my dog will die.
I know.
It's not fair to put that kind of guilt on me, and I'm sure you get the guilt all the time here. Yeah. And just briefly about vets, you have a very, very tough job to try to diagnose against the fact that people don't want to pay a lot of money initially, so you might take a conservative route, and then they complain about that. So of course we get cases where the dog dies or the cat gets hurt, and everybody thinks the vet did it. First off, it's so rare that the vet actually did something wrong. It's just so rare. But we're in a society where you have to blame somebody. And Bulger, I've told you, is a place nobody ever calls and complains about. But it's so easy to make a complaint. And we rarely will take the case because it's rarely the vet's fault. But one thing that's come up, I've noticed, and this can protect veterinarians if you have any that are watching the show, is medication. Dosage of Rimadyl, Carprofen, of a lot of different medicines, gabapentin. As humans, when we go to the drugstore and there's an insert. I mean, the words are tiny, you can't read it, but it's telling you side effects and dosage and things like that. Too often, as a pet owner, when we pick up our medication at certain places, it doesn't come with an insert. And sometimes it certainly could be the drug manufacturer's fault. But they have their liability is protected, and it's pushed onto the vets because it's called this thing called a learned intermediary, meaning The manufacturer gave the veterinarian all the information you need. It's your job to tell the pet owner about the side effects and what could happen. And I don't know that happens often enough. Yeah. Plus, even as a pet owner, if we hear the side effects, but we know this medication is going to help, we're probably going to take the medication. Yeah. But it seems to me more that the major veterinary pharmaceutical companies are pushing that on to veterinarians.
Yeah, they do, because we buy big bulk, bottles of it to dispense, and they have one package insert, not 15, not a tear-off sheet, which they really should have.
Yeah.
Because I'm finding that's starting to come back on the veterinarians.
It's interesting.
Yeah. We certainly, we see that as well, although we try to give clients handouts, with that information.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, this was awesome. This was a super fun show. I really loved it.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Excellent. So thank you so much for coming today. Keep your calls going it's bostondoglawyers.com, right?
Right. 844 DOGATTY.
That's awesome.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So have a great month from Boulder Veterinary Hospital.
Thank you to Ethos as our sponsors.
And please go and subscribe to our podcast at wherever you subscribe to podcasts.
Yeah.
Rate and review us if you get a chance. Unless it's a bad review, and then don't.
And then we will see you next time. Thanks so much for joining.